So let's get going. The Farm Bill that we currently operate on expires in September of 2023, so it's another year. From a perspective of what's going on in Washington, we're really turning our attention to the Farm Bill and negotiations and all of that kind of stuff. But before we get too far down the line on that, we have to wait until the elections of this fall. You know, this is a cycled year where the full House of Representatives is elected, and a third of the Senate is up for election. There are 183 members right now in the House and Senate that have never voted on a Farm Bill. And by the time the elections are finished in November, we anticipate that there'll be almost 250 members of Congress that have never voted on a Farm Bill. That's how much turnover there's been in the last 5 years. So we'll continue our efforts to educate folks and work with them, but hopefully we'll be okay again when the Farm Bill rolls around. It could be extended. A lot of things could happen over the next 18 months or so. What would we look for in a Farm Bill? Hopefully, there'll be an opportunity to increase the loan rate. You know, the loan rate is the rate that our mills use to borrow under. Most all of the commodity groups are looking at loan rate increases. I'm certain that we'll be there too. You may not hear a whole bunch about loan rate increases from us in the midst of negotiations. The last time we went through a Farm Bill, you might recall that we got a 0.75% increase in the loan rate, and we didn't even attempt to make that a public policy statement until right at the final negotiations when the Farm Bill was in conference. After it had passed the Senate, we stuck in an effort and got a 0.75%. When you start really telling people exactly what you want, that provides ammunition for our opponents. So you may not hear a bunch about things that we're trying to do, but know that our eyes are open and we're working diligently. We just don't want to let our opponents know everything that we're working on. So bear that. With regards to the disaster assistance program, the WIP Plus program, that's still in the works. You know, anytime there's a major hurricane or natural disaster event, it takes many months and even up to a year and a half before anything's done. We continue to work on it. We'll see where it plays out. The other big thing in Washington that we work on is suspension agreements, our trade with Mexico. All of that is in place. It was renewed a couple of years ago. The next renewal of that suspension agreement is in 2025. We have trade attorneys that we continue to work with in Washington that monitor the trade agreements to make sure they're being correctly complied with, and that seems to be going well. What's important with regards to those suspension agreements is that the Mexican industry likes our suspension agreements because it forces discipline in the Mexican market, and it forces them to import sugar above floor prices. And that has a lot to do with the current price structure that we're in, more so than what's in the Farm Bill. So those agreements are crucial to us. When they come back up for renewal in 2025, we're hopeful that they'll be renewed. On labor, many of you are aware of the adverse effective wage rate proposed rule that could significantly increase labor costs for us. We made comments to that proposed rule. The Department of Labor has not made any ruling or final rules with regards to that proposed rule. So we don't know what's going to happen with it. We thought that maybe something would come out this summer, but it looks like that's being delayed even further. Even if a rule comes out and they decide to do something different with wage rates, we're thinking that there'd be an implementation date sometimes into next year if they do something. So we're not certain what's going to happen there. One final thing kind of on the legislative side of things that I would like to encourage you to really consider, and that's crop insurance. The crop insurance program is something that really works for many of the other commodity groups. We've made significant changes in the sugarcane crop insurance program, and it is a legitimate risk management tool for sugarcane these days. A lot of to the north and west have used this program to some benefit. I encourage each of you to look at it and give it consideration. At least educate yourself as to what crop insurance might be able to do for you. You should have a crop insurance agent that can offer some legitimate guidance to you as to what crop insurance can do for you as a risk management tool. And once you become well educated, then you can make a decision as to whether or not some crop insurance product may work for you. There have been a number of folks that have used the hurricane provisions in the crop insurance policy to their nice benefit. But the crop insurance product is one that you really should at least educate yourself on, just like you educate yourself on fertilizer rates. It can be a legitimate risk management tool for some folks. There's one thing that we found out in the last 6 months or so after the hurricane that you need to be aware of, and that is what's called your average production history. Okay, so each farm has an average production history, and it's that the crop insurance companies receive from your mills. And what we found is that some of the companies are not capturing the right data from your mill. They may be capturing a TRS or a CRS number without a final liquidation. And so your production history, which is a crucial part of calculating an indemnity payment, needs to be accurate. So when you're visiting with your agent, ask them to identify for you what your average production history is and compare that to what you think your production history is. If that number is lower than it needs to be, that could affect an indemnity payment in years to come. So some growers have corrected their APHs. It's not hard to do, but we need to make sure, and you need to make sure, that the crop insurance companies have an accurate number for you on your production history. Moving on to other things in the league, research things are going well for us. We've been able to attract additional funding to the USDA Research Center. Last year, some $10 million was appropriated to work on continuing to improve and finish construction that was started out there years ago. We've been able to get some additional money through federal appropriations into the annual budget there. We're currently working on a $2 million joint effort with Florida to increase genomics work in sugarcane research and breeding. So those are all good things we have going. Just in wrapping up a few things, and Kenneth mentioned a little bit about sugarcane and how we grow cane in Louisiana, and folks around the world think we shouldn't even be producing a crop here. But in addition to just in the world, if you heard me at Farm Bureau, you heard me say that when it comes to sugar production in America, whether it's sugarcane or sugar beet production, based upon what I know, I don't think there's a better place to be than in Louisiana as a sugar producer. First, Texas continually struggles with acreage. Sugar in Texas is kind of a secondary crop to oranges and onions and everything else. They continually struggle to put cane in the ground for planting. Florida is constantly spending tens of millions of dollars a year fighting environmental issues, mostly wetland issues around Lake Okeechobee and in the Everglades. Beet growers, sugar beet growers can only grow beets on a quarter of their crop. They have to rotate beets every 4 years. And in a year like this, when all of the other commodity groups and commodities are at higher prices, then the beet farm maybe they put things in not beets, and the beet mills are suffering for enough throughput. And just the converse happens when prices in all the other commodity groups are low. Sugar has to carry those. So all that said, we're in a good position in Louisiana. We've got a strong industry, increasing acreage, great research work being done, and so we've got a lot to be thankful for here in the industry. Finally, I mentioned new members of Congress and the fly-in stuff that we do. We bring growers up to Washington. The last 2 years we've had to do that virtually, but we're always looking for some new people to come and make that trip with us. So we encourage you to be involved. If there are some younger folks in your farming operation that seem to have some abilities to get in front of people and speak a little bit, we would encourage and ask that you send those names on to us. We're always looking for folks to help us do that work. It's crucially important. And a lot of the folks we meet with in Washington are young enough to be my children and almost grandchildren. So sometimes those folks get tired of looking at these older folks and see a young, fresh face in front of them, and it resonates with them. Even young ladies in your farming operations, those folks work very well for us in Washington. Great stories that you folks can tell to the policymakers in Washington. And so with that, I'll wrap things up. Thank you.